I know you're going to enjoy this program. My name is Tom Ziegler. I'm the CEO of Ziegler Inc., and Zig Ziglar is my father. And I'm going to tell you about golden rule relationships in a story that I watched play out literally hundreds of times in my life. You see, I was the last born in our family. I'm the baby by almost 10 years, and Mom had already proven that she knew how to cook. And so I was at home by myself, literally, from the time I was about 8 years old. My sisters had moved out, so it was me, Mom, and Dad. And Mom would say something like this, "Hey, it's time to go to dinner." And we would all go get in the car because we were going to Luby's Cafeteria. Now, if you've never had the privilege of eating at a Southern-style cafeteria, next time you're in the South or in the Dallas area, you need to check out a cafeteria. Here's how it works. You get in line, and then you go down this long line of buffet. I mean, it's incredible. All these different foods, and there's servers on the other side, and they serve you food. So you get your salad, you get your meat and your entree and your vegetables and your desserts and your breads, and there's about 100 choices to choose from, and you've got to narrow that down to the 4 or 5 or however many that you want. Well, when we would go to Luby's, it was always an amazing show because, you see, we went there 2 or 3 times a week, and Mom and Dad knew everybody at Luby's. So Mom would walk in, and Dad called her the happy hugger, right? And so the reason he did is because she hugged everybody. So she's hugging the cashier, and she's hugging the lady who was driving the cart of drinks that they would roll around and serve you at your tables. And then we would get in line. Now, when I was young, when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, it didn't seem to bother me, but sometime around the 12, 13, 14-year-old, I realized that Dad was different. You see, Mom would go first down the line, I would go second, and then Dad would go third, and we'd have our tray. And I would notice that Dad would give a motivational talk to every server in line. No matter who they were, no matter how long they worked there, he'd ask them how they were doing. He'd give them a word of encouragement. He'd ask them about their family. And I want you to know that the people who worked in this line, they came from all backgrounds, many of them immigrants to our country, most of them trying to get an entry-level job. A lot of them, life had been hard on them. I mean, this wasn't the first place you would think to go and work. And you should see the smiles on their face. Dad would give them this motivational message, and as he was talking to them, they would start piling the food on his plate. Every time we got through the line, I noticed that Dad would have 2 or 3 times as much food on his plate as we would. You see, he was practicing his philosophy. You can have everything in life you want if you would just help enough other people get what they want. When he walked into that place, everybody smiled. Everybody wanted to be a part of his world. He was practicing golden rule relationships. You see, I learned about life in a cafeteria line. The way you treat people, the way you respect them, the way you find out what's personal and unique about them, about their kids, about their dreams, about their hopes. You see, Dad was doing all of that in a 5-minute trip down the cafeteria line. Imagine what you could accomplish if you employed that same attitude and those same things and the people who matter most to you, your friends, your family, those you work with on a daily basis. That's what this program is about. You have in your control right now the ability to create golden rule relationships. You're going to learn so many different ideas and ways to help enhance that. But at the end of this session, whether you do or not is really a choice. And I want you to know that if you make the right choice, you will never regret it. It's my pleasure to introduce my father, Zig Ziglar.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My goodness. All right, all right. Thank you. My goodness. Thank you. I'm going to talk tonight about relationships. Let me tell you why I'm going to talk about relationships, and this is probably going to stun some of you because this is going to be pretty heavy in lots of areas. By and large, my research clearly indicates that if your relationships with those you love are good, almost regardless of how everything else is going, regardless of where your corporate position or your network marketing is, almost regardless of where the bank account is, if you're getting along well with the people you love, life is pretty good to you. On the other hand, if everything else in your life is going well, but you're not getting along well with those you love, then things are pretty tough. And so we want to talk about those relationships. I have a lot of privileges. One of them is I have access to some of the great minds in this country in the field of psychology, theology, and the physiological world, physical, mental, and spiritual. Before I verbalize anything, record anything, or write anything of any significance, I always validate it in all three disciplines, because I believe if you're on target with those three disciplines that you're going to be pretty close to being right, particularly if it's right theologically. Now, here's what I have found. I don't do any counseling. I'm not trained for it, don't have time for it. And my natural inclination is to believe everything the last person I talk to tells me. And you know, that really does not make for good professional counseling. But the people who do the counseling tell me this. They say that almost 100% of all of the counseling they do is the direct result of relationship difficulties. Husband, wife, parent, child, teacher, student, employer, employee, brother, brother, neighbor, neighbor, relationship difficulties. Now, the question is, why are we having so many relationship difficulties? Well, there are a couple of thoughts. Dr. Smiley Blanton, a psychiatrist, says that 80% of all of the counseling he does is the direct result of parents not having taught their children manners. Now, manners is a lot more than how do you hold a knife and fork. It's deportment, it's civility, it's respect for other people. And the parent who does not teach the child how to say thank you and please has denied them the privilege of learning gratitude. You see, thank you is the first step towards developing gratitude. And you will never see a happy person who is not a grateful person. And if we don't teach our child that, then we're setting them up for some problems later on in their life. And then in the last 30 years particularly, we've become a hooray for me, to heck with you. I'm going to do it my way. If I have to win through intimidation, friend, I'm going to look out for number one. I'm going to get in your face to get what I want. And I've just described another very miserable human being. You will never see anybody who is self-centered who is a happy camper. They just do not exist. It's only when we get involved in others that we really do begin to achieve any happiness. Now, I want to share with you a little scenario, because the scenario that I'm going to set up really shows the philosophy that I want to teach, and it's built around the concept that you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. It's Friday afternoon. It's about 5 o'clock. The husband in this scenario has been out of town all week. He comes in onto the front porch. He's heavily laden with luggage and a bulging briefcase. He doesn't want to sit it down to ring the doorbell, so instead of doing that, he kicks the door. Now, doesn't just gently kick it, he about kicks it down. Bang, 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 bang. Well, his wife, somewhat startled, comes to the front door, opens it, and there he stands, and she's somewhat startled. And he says to her, now the reason I'm late is I've been to a meeting. Now I'm glad I went to the meeting, because I learned some things that just bother the hang out of me. I learned that there are a lot of rights around this house that I have not been getting. As a matter of fact, I've made a list of them, and the first thing you and I are going to do, we're going to sit down. I'm going to go over my rights, because, woman, I'm telling you, there are going to be some changes made around this house. Now, I can well imagine her responding, well, Buster, I didn't go to a meeting. I didn't need to. And I don't have the list written out. I didn't need to do that either. I've got them burned indelibly into my mind. And you betcha I want us to sit down and go over these things, because I agree with you. There are going to be some changes made around here, and you ain't going to like most of them. Now, don't you know they had a wonderful, romantic, loving, exhilarating weekend? And don't you know that on Monday morning they each got up ready to go out and conquer the world? I mean, to make it a better place to live, to benefit mankind in every way. But let's change the scenario. Same Friday afternoon, same front porch, different husband. This one, instead of kicking the door down, he gently taps it. His wife comes to the door and he said, Sweetheart, I apologize for being late, but in a way I'm glad I am, because I've been to a meeting and I learned some things that disturbed me greatly. I learned that in all probability there are many needs which you have that I simply have not been meeting as your husband. And what I would like for us to do is I would like for us to sit down, and I would like for you to share with me how I can become the husband that you thought you were getting when we married and that you deserve to have. And I can well imagine her responding, well, you know, actually, I've always loved being your wife. But from time to time, I have felt that I've not been meeting all of your needs. Let's do sit down and talk about how we can meet each other's needs better. Doesn't need any elaboration, does it? One is self-centered, the other is the other person-centered. In building the business, you got exactly the same concept. If I'm going to get you into business because I want to build my business, that's one thing. But if I've got something I genuinely believe will change your life and give you a future unparalleled anywhere, then that message is communicated in every one of your actions and your thoughts, and your effectiveness goes up dramatically. You see, successful relationships are mutually beneficial, or they're not long-lasting. You know what people want? They want a dream. They really do. And all of us want the same thing. We want to be happy and healthy. We want to be at least reasonably prosperous, and money's not everything, but it's reasonably close to oxygen. I mean, you know, it is one of those things that is kind of neat to have. They want to be secure. They want to have friends. They want to have peace of mind, good family relationships, and they want to have hope that the future is going to be better. We need to treat people with respect and dignity always. We have the privilege of doing some training in Tri-Cities Hospital here in Dallas. Every 3 months, we have what we call People Builders meeting at our company, where we recognize our employees who've done a good job. We have a client to come in and say to our people, here's what your philosophy has done to me. Gloria Hogg was one of the ladies who came in to one of our People Builders meeting. It was a terribly rainy day. Traffic was heavy. She was running late. When she came in, she was all smile and laughs, you know, and one of those personable, gregarious, outgoing people. And she was hugging the people that she knew, the trainers that she had worked with from our company. And then it came her time to speak, and she stood up cracking jokes and so forth, you know, and she was laughing, and just really a marvelous, marvelous lady. And then all of a sudden she came to a dead stop, and she said, you might not know it, but you're listening to what was one of the worst racists of all time. She said, if you were not black, I just flat had it in for you. I couldn't wait to get on you verbally and attack you. And if you were just half black, that didn't count. Got to be all the way. And she said, you know, you brought this concept in, which is the golden rule expressed another way. And she said, I'm a Christian. I knew better. But when I saw what was happening with the practical application in the marketplace, she said, I decided I needed to get with the program. Let me tell you what happened. Marvelous promotion. And Governor of Texas recognized her as 100 outstanding women of distinction in the state of Texas. You know what she does today? She gets up at 5 o'clock every morning and goes out and gives 3 insulin shots. One to a black lady, one to a white lady, and one to an Hispanic lady. Once a month, she draws the name of a senior citizen and pays their electricity bill. She said, I've got such a good job, and you know, life's been so good to me, and the philosophy works so well. Let me share it with others. You see, other people can give you pleasure, but you will never be happy until you do things for other people. And that's what building relationships is all about. It's thinking team. The giant Belgian horse on its own can pull 8,000 pounds. Hook him up with another giant Belgian, the team will pull 17,000 pounds. Send them off to school, teach them to pull in harmony. The team will pull over 25,000 pounds. Lou Holtz and I are good buddies. He and I have been working together a little bit since Arkansas. I love to listen to Lou. He's so good at what he does. He's a marvelous coach, of course. I also think Joe Paterno is one of the great coaches of all time. Now, Notre Dame and Penn State have kind of an interesting philosophy. They're the only 2 major universities that I'm familiar with that will not put the names of the athletes on their jerseys. They put numbers. because they believe team is the issue. And you know, this team working together is the concept. You don't always have, you don't need to have the best athletes to have the best team if you're functioning together. For example, you might say, well, that sounds pretty good for the team, but what about the individuals? What are their benefits that come from this? Well, Notre Dame and Penn State are two of the top 3 teams for sending players to the National Football League. Oh, it takes individual talent, we know that, but the value goes up dramatically when they fit into the system. I want to challenge you intellectually, but I want to get you involved emotionally, because until you're involved emotionally, you're not really with the program. You're not going to be as effective at doing it as you otherwise would. Now, these superstars do something rather unique. They're so confident and secure in what they do know that they're perfectly willing to recognize what they do not know. And that's very important. And what they do, instead of waiting till a problem arises, they go to the people who have the answers and they accumulate those answers. And they also are very open and they communicate with those who need help and they discover what they need and they take from the one and give to the other, and nobody loses anything, everybody gains, and the team comes out way ahead, 8-1. Fascinating how the unselfish approach to what we're talking about really does work, and works extremely well. Now, one thing I want to emphasize, you'll hear me say this in about every recording I'll ever do, you got to be before you can do, and you've got to do before you can have. And you cannot separate the message from the messenger. The old saying is, what you are speak so loudly I cannot hear what you're saying, is absolutely more than a cliche. It's a total absolute truth. I'd like to demonstrate what I'm talking about, that people don't necessarily believe everything you say, but they do believe what you do. If you will, just empty your hands, please. I want to get you to do something. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. And then I'd like to get you just slap your hands, okay? 1, 2, 3, go. Now, you know, folks, I don't want to brag, but I'm pretty good at communicating. Now, what I did was I gave clear, precise instructions, slowed it down, demonstrated what I wanted you to do, and you paid no attention to me whatever. See, one of the things in leadership is the fact that people really will pay attention to what we do far more than what we say. If we go out and quote our Bible, and talk about our faith and what Christ has meant to us, then step out on our wives or anything of that nature, somehow or another, the message is lost, is it not? We've got to be consistent in our actions. Now, let me simply say that I think one of the reasons I'm probably the most fortunate, one of the most blessed men that ever walked, is because I have a relationship that has always been there throughout our lifetime. It's been one of the encouraging factors of my life. I tease a whole lot about that redhead of mine. All of you know she's a decided redhead, meaning simply one day she just decided to be a redhead. Most of you know she's been inducted into the MasterCard Hall of Fame. For 9 years was on the all-mall team at Prestonwood Shopping Center, and last year made MVP Most Valuable Purchaser. And a lot of times people will say to me, "Zig, why are y'all always holding hands?" Well, shucks, if I turn her loose, she heads for the mall. Her little car gives her 19 miles to the gallon. Well, a lot of times I'll have people say to me, "Well, Zig, does she ever get upset with you for saying those things?" Well, actually, she helps write the material. But let me tell you why she doesn't get upset. We had been married 27 years before I was able to give her financial stability, much less financial security. We had some tough times in there. See, I've had my lights disconnected. I've had my telephone cut off. I've had to turn a car in that I desperately hated to do. My first baby was born, hospital bill was $64. I didn't have $64. I had to get out and make 2 sales in order to get my own baby out of the hospital. In one 5-year stretch, I was in 17 different deals, and that's all they were deals. It was from one thing to another. And yet during all of those years, I do not ever remember her saying, honey, you know, if we just had more money, it'd be so much easier. If we had more financial stability, it'd be so much better. It was always, tomorrow is going to be better. You can do it. And then the 2 things that meant everything on earth to me: I love you and I believe in you. There's no way on earth I can describe to you what it meant to me to have a cheerleader cheering me on every day of my life and praying for me every night. I can say to you with total certainty that had it not been for that support, I would not be your speaker this evening or anybody else's speaker very often. And so she knows. You see, she knows my heart. I delight in the fact that she can go to the shopping center and get pretty well what she wants. And you see, number one, half of it is hers. Second, she's a very responsible individual. But the delight really comes in pleasing her. It really does. The only time she goes absolutely berserk is when one of the grandchildren are with her. And, you know, had we known grandchildren were going to be so much fun, we certainly would have been nicer to their parents. But all of that to say, yes, that support is what has made the difference. And I'm going to be talking more about that. But, you know, as I talk, some of it's going to get kind of mushy. It's going to get, I hope, exciting. I hope helpful. I hope revealing. Because you see, the relationship between the husband and wife is so incredibly important. Not too long ago, we had some other difficulties, financial difficulties. We'd made some serious mistakes in judgment. And we had some things happen to us that were kind of out of our control, but nevertheless, we were the ones who paid for it. We were betrayed by an individual that it cost us and cost us dearly. And you could look at the bottom line there, and you know, you'd say, well, there's no way that the company itself is going to make it. And yet, we had no choice whatever. You see, I have a dream. We have a vision. A vision is the desired picture of the future that you want to have. See, our mission statement is to be the difference maker in the personal, family, and business lives of enough people to make a positive difference in America and the world. Oh, and I know that sounds like an incredible mission statement for a little company of 60 people. And Zig, how do you think it can happen? Well, you know, as you've heard me say in another recording, I love to tell the story of the grandfather walking the beaches with his grandson. And every few steps, the grandfather would reach down and he'd pick up a sand dollar and throw it out to sea. And a few more steps, you see, he would pick up another one and throw it out to sea. And then the grandson said, "Granddaddy, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, son, these sand dollars are living organisms. If I don't throw them back out to sea, they've been washed ashore by the tide. And if I don't throw them back out to sea, they'll die in the hot sun." And the grandson said, "But Granddaddy, there are thousands and thousands of them. What possible difference can it make?" And the grandfather reached down and picked up another one and threw it out to sea. And he said, "For this one, it makes all the difference in the world." You see, that individual that you bring into the business and sponsor and teach and nurture, there's no telling how many people he or her might touch along the way. And if you touch enough people, the reality is, yes, you can make such a dramatic difference, and you can touch them better as a team than you can as an individual. When you look at the support, we had made some bad decisions, and it really was costly to us. And yet the reality is we had to decide just, what are you made of? How tough are you? You see, failure is an event. It's not a person. Yesterday really did end last night. And you don't fail by losing. You fail by quitting. That's the only way really that you do fail. And yes, as some of you know, on May 13th of this year, we lost our oldest daughter. I buried 9 brothers and sisters, both my parents. I'm here to tell you there's nothing that even comes close to the grief that goes with the loss of a child. She's supposed to go to my funeral. I wasn't supposed to go to her. I'm so grateful that we've not had to ask the question, why? Because, you see, God tells us that all things do work together for good to those who love God. We know with total certainty where she is. We know we'll see her again. We know a lot of other things. She had pulmonary fibrosis. She was to have gone to St. Louis on April 30th for an evaluation for a lung transplant. On the 28th, she was suddenly and dramatically taken worse, and she was rushed to the hospital, and 15 days later, she went home to be with the Lord. One thing that made it so particularly tough was the fact that I have a daily newspaper column, and she was working with me. She was brilliant. She was so language sensitive that she gave the column a special quality that made it definitely better. And I would brag on her every time she would take a column I'd written and put that little touch to it that made such a difference. And I would tell her, I said, "Doll, this is so good." And about a month after we started, she said to me, "You know, Dad, I now know the joy that you have felt for so many years. I feel it myself because I know I'm good at this, and I know that I am making a difference and will make a difference in other lives." And you see, if I were to ask the question, why, there'd be no answer. But the pastor at the funeral services preached one of the most moving and powerful messages I have ever heard. He said, "You might have read in the paper where Susan Whitmire was dead. Don't you believe it? She's more alive than she has ever been. And when she closed her eyes for the last time here on earth and opened them in heaven, I can well imagine her saying, 'Why, of course, there are no questions.'" That doesn't mean the grief is not there. We will shed many more tears. But I'm here to tell you, I learned again why I love my redhead so much. I found out that the reality is she's the strong one in the family. If we did not have each other, I truthfully do not know how I could have handled it, and my faith is strong. But having her there, the toughest time of our life, is what made the difference. That's one of the benefits. I have thought on a number of occasions, what would it have been like had years ago we gone our separate ways? My love for my daughter would have been fully as intense, and her love for her was obviously been just as intense. But here she is, and here I am, and we would not have that support that makes such a dramatic difference in everything that we do. Family, so incredibly important. I was thinking back as I was preparing this about an occasion a number of years ago when our oldest granddaughter spent the night with us, and when I got in that evening, I'd been really on a terrific pace, and I was tired, and the redhead said, "Honey," said, "tomorrow why don't you just kind of sleep in, and then when we get up, we'll take sunshine and we'll go to the zoo." And I said, "Well, let's do it." Well, the next morning we got to the zoo, and we had taken the camera, and she was the official photographer for the day. She took all the pictures except the ones that she was in, and they're mementos. And we had a wonderful time, and late afternoon we got through, and we were headed back to North Dallas where we were living, and we rode past Reunion Tower, and she said, "Grandy," said, "let's go up there and have dinner." Well, there are a couple of factors involved. First of all, the food really is not good. And second, they're awfully proud of it. I mean, they are really proud of it. So I explained to her that it was too early to have dinner, but that we would go up there. And we went up there, and we walked around, and we could see it's a beautiful sight. The wind blows like crazy, and we could see all of Dallas. We went back down, and we got a couple of souvenirs, and then we headed home, went out to the club, and she said, "Grandy, let's go hit a few golf balls." And well, she's kind of a smooth talker anyhow, and we went out there, and we hit a few golf balls, and then we came back, and we went for a swim, and as we were swimming, I was thinking, this day never would have happened had the redhead and I gone our separate ways years ago. When you look at the things that really are important in marriage, J.D. Unwin, a British anthropologist, did a study of 80 civilizations. And he found, and this covered over 4,000 years, he discovered that in every single case, when the move from the conservative way of life, one man, one wife, when they move with a conservative principled base, that over a period of time the family disintegrated, and within one generation after the family fell, the civilization fell. Well, Unwin went a little step further than that. He learned something else. You know, sexual energy is the most creative of all energy. And if there's one man and he has one wife, the man in most cases has surplus sexual energy. And if he's faithful to his wife, he uses the surplus energy to build the business, to paint the paintings, to write the books, to create the art, to make the inventions, to better mankind. When it shifts and he takes on other irresponsibilities and commits the adulterous acts and has the mistress and the girlfriends, that energy is dissipated and the productivity and creativity go down, and guilt is a terrible destroyer of creativity and productivity. The data is absolutely beyond any doubt. It really is there. But you know, the statistical data, when we speak of this, if 10 couples were divorced, 2 years later, 7 of them say it was probably a mistake. 5 years later, 5 of them have remarried and divorced again. 10 years later, only 1 of them, 1 of the 10, will say that they are happy. In other words, the marriage we're in is the one that gives us the best chance of being happy and successful. And yet I've had some couples say, well, we were so young. Well, now suppose God were to say, well, if you're not going to take that vow seriously, I think I'll just cut John 3:16 out of the Bible. You see, if you're not going to take your vow seriously, what would God think about us, or what would we think about God if He didn't take His vow seriously? God does take them seriously. Let me tell you another reason why it's really the best thing to do to stay where you are. If you have children, your child is 30 times as likely to be abused if the marriage is broken and another marriage takes place. 30 times as likely to be abused, 10 times as likely to be raised in poverty. I remember when my son was a teenager. I don't know why I raised the issue that day, but I said to my son one day, and incidentally, please, I know that many blended families do work. I am not here to hang a guilt trip on anybody. What I am saying is, let's plan and prepare for the future. If it is done, it is done. But let's look from this moment forward as to how we can build these relationships and mend our families and get together and work together. My son and I were talking one day, and I said, son, if anybody were to ask you what you liked best about your dad, what would you say? And my boy reflected on it for a moment. He said, Dad, I would say the thing I like best about my dad is that he loves my mom. And I said, son, why would you say that? And he said, well, Dad, I know Mom loves you, and I know that as long as you treat her right, I will never have to choose between living with Mom or living with Dad. That very day, one of his best friends had to make that choice. That's a terrible choice for a child to have to make. Now, let me simply point this out. In the Amway business, in network marketing, and this thought occurred to me the other day as I was reading the current issue of Psychology Today, the September-October 1995 issue, and they were talking about shy kids. And as I have been around network marketers for years and years and years, I do not ever remember meeting a shy child of a parent who is in the business, who's been in it for as long as 5 years. Now, I'm certain there might be some. You know what I'm talking about? I've never met one. And yet the Psychology Today article said that up to 50% of all the kids today are shy. And that speaks for trouble in many cases in the years ahead. Why aren't they shy here? Because they are involved in so many activities. They hear so many exciting speakers and recordings, and they get to go on trips. And mom and dad tell them about the business. They are included in the business in so many different ways. Relationships. I'm a fan of Bill Glass. Bill is the former All-Pro for the Cleveland Browns. He does prison crusades. I learned last Saturday night when I had the privilege of speaking for their ministry that Bill Glass in the last 25 years has missed one weekend in being in prisons working with people. And that one weekend, he had a blood clot that was life-threatening. Bill Glass has been in 360 plus prisons. He has talked to literally thousands of prisoners one-on-one, and 94% of those who are incarcerated are men. And in these one-on-one interviews, Bill says that 100% of the men, no exception, 100% of them hate their fathers. And they take that hate out on society. The government can pass all the laws they want to concerning crime. They can build all the prisons they want to house them. They can try every rehabilitation program known to man. They will never solve the crime problem until the problem in the family is solved, specifically between the father and the son. Now, ladies, I'm going to pay you the supreme compliment. I'm going to almost completely ignore you. Because you don't have the problem that us men really in most cases have. Bill said in the state of Florida there are 40,000 people incarcerated. Of those 40,000, 13 of them, not 13,000, 13 of the 40,000 are Jews. I told the story here in Dallas in my Sunday school class. And when I finished, Lieutenant Colonel Wells Fields came up to me and he said, "Mr. Ziegler, I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps. Last 3 years I was in charge of incarceration in the Navy and the Marine Corps. And in those 3 years, 36,000 men came through my jurisdiction." He said, now, a lot of them were just in the brig for the weekend or 2 weeks or 30 days. But of the 36,000 that came through, 3 of them were Jews. And 2 of them said the other one wasn't. I spoke up in Arkansas, Little Rock. A gentleman came up to me when it was over, gave me his card, and he said, "I'm with the prison system in Arkansas. We have 7,500 people incarcerated. 7 of them are Jews." And I know exactly what you're thinking right now. What do they do? And if we did the same thing, could we get similar results? But I'm going to tell you what they do, and I believe, yes, we can get similar results. This goes back several thousand years to the days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when the Jewish father did and the Jewish father does 3 things, regardless of the age of their son. See, the age of the son's got nothing to do with whether he's your son or not, whether he's 2 or 20 or 65. The Jewish father says, "Bless you, my son. I love you, son," and then gives him a big old hug. And a lot of times a big old kiss. Now, we had 3 daughters and a son. I love my boy fully as much as I love my girls. He came along 10 years later. He was my golfing buddy. The highlight of my year, genuinely, is when he and I are able to go down to Austin and play in the father-son golf tournament. 4 days of marvelous companionship and fellowship, and we both love the game of golf. We were very, very close. And I don't know why, I don't know when it happened, but over a period of years, I just stopped hugging my boy and telling him how much I loved him. I didn't set a date and say, "Well, you're 16 now, boy, you're too big for that, you're bigger than I am, and we're not going to do it anymore." But I just quit doing it. I don't ever remember greeting one of my girls that I did not hug her and kiss her and tell her I loved her. When we meet, whether we met in the morning or met in the afternoon, we meet the second time that day, it's the same procedure. When we talk to each other on the telephone, one of us initiates it, the other one responds, "I sure do love you," but that wasn't happening with my boy. When I heard Bill Glass, a couple of days later, we'd been playing golf. We got back to the house, and his clubs were in the back of my car. He got them out and was putting them in the trunk of his, and I said, "Son, I need to tell you something." And he said, "Okay, Dad." I said, son, I don't know why, but over the years, I've stopped telling you how much I love you and just how important you are to me. And son, I just want you to know that you're very important to me and I love you very much. And he said, well, Dad, I know that. But he had tears in his eyes when he said it. And I said, yeah, I know you know it, boy. But you need your dad saying it more and more. And you will hear your dad saying it more and more. And a beautiful relationship became more beautiful. When I go in the corporate office and see my son, even if he's with a corporate client, I no longer shake my son's hand. If I see him in a restaurant somewhere, I no longer shake my son's hand. If I see him on the golf course, I don't shake his hand anymore. I do the manly thing. I hug my boy. And a beautiful relationship became even more beautiful. And Dad, let me tell you why your daughter needs you. Again, the ladies don't have this problem. The redhead and the two girls, they just hug on that boy of mine and her just like you cannot believe. Always has, always will. If our statistics hold, we know that there's some men here whose fathers have gone on, they're dead. And I know that odds are that some of the relationships were absolutely horrible. And so I'm going to make a suggestion to you, and that is this. If your dad is dead, I plead with you, I encourage you, forgive your dad for what he did. Regardless of what it was, forgive him. And then I'm going to ask you to ask God to forgive you for your attitude towards your dad. Now you might say, well, my dad doesn't deserve forgiveness. Listen, let God be the judge of that. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Because the reality is, until you forgive him, he would still be controlling you from the grave. Forgive your dad, and then ask him to forgive you. Second, if your dad is still living and the relationship was horrible, and I don't care what it was that was done, I don't care how horrible it is and how deeply it hurts you, and you might even need counseling to get this done, but I encourage you, if it's humanly possible, go to your dad and confront him and say, Dad, I don't know why you did that. I was such a little guy and I couldn't defend myself and it hurt me deeply and it's been a hindrance to me in my life. But Dad, I just want you to know that I forgive you for that. And I'm going to ask you, Dad, to forgive me for my attitude towards you. Now, it's going to be a very difficult thing in some cases for this to happen, but it's so enormously important. I can tell you with almost total certainty that the day will come that you will either say, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. You see, as a practical matter, he did foul up your past if it was an abusive relationship. It's true he also is probably fouling up the way you are this very day. Now, surely you're not going to let him control your future. Forgive your dad and ask him to forgive you. I gave this talk to a group a few months ago, and 6 months after I gave the talk, a young man came to me at another meeting, and he said, Zig, when you were suggesting that, I thought in my own heart, there's no way on earth I could ever forgive my dad for what he did to me. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made that he really was in control of me. And so I went to my dad, and I said, Dad, I just can't believe you did what you did. It hurt me grievously. But Dad, I just want you to know I do forgive you, and I'm going to ask you to forgive me for my attitude towards you. And the young man said, my dad, when I said I forgive you, he just broke down and started weeping profusely. And he grabbed me and hugged me, and we wept together there for a number of minutes. And he said, Zig, the relationship is still not perfect. The hurt was too deep for too long. But he said, our relationship is getting better all the time. I believe everybody deep down wants a father that they can look to and love. And when you establish that relationship, some amazing things happen. And ladies, if your father abused you, or for that matter, if any of you, if your mother abused you, I encourage you to do exactly the same thing. There's nothing that frees an individual as much as forgiveness does. I'm telling you, that really sets you free. And until that forgiveness is there, you know, the Bible is very clear on that. Unless you forgive others, God is not going to forgive you. I'm here to tell you, you've got an awful lot to lose by not forgiving. And as long as you're forgiving, why not just make a clean sweep of it? Those people who have harmed you or wronged you over a period of time, I encourage you to include them in the forgiveness bit. Forgive them, and it will make a difference in your life. The girls need you too. You know, when my little girls were coming along, the boy came and said 10 years later, I was in the cookware business, and I used to go to the grocery store 3 or 4 times a week to buy my groceries for the cooking demonstration that night. And by the time the little girls got 10 or 12 months old, I'd always take them with me. And by the time they got big enough to talk, and they'd been riding on my neck, and I'd bounce them up and down on the beds. You know how we do the little ones. And when they got big enough to talk, and somebody would notice the obvious, that is the personality and beauty of all of my little girl. And I'd always say to my daughter, tell them who you love. And she would say, I love everybody, but I prefer my daddy, you know. I mean, we just do that, don't we? But, you know, the interesting thing is a lot of fathers, when the little girls start to mature, the most critical time of their life, when they wonder a lot of things, is it going to make me ugly? Am I going to break out all over? Who will know about it? Am I different? Or why haven't I started? I mean, they have all of these questions. And at that precise moment, too many times, old Dad backs away. And at that moment, old Fast Freddy from down the street moves in. Especially if he's 3 or 4 years older than our girl. Dr. Ross Campbell, one of the psychiatrists I have access to, says that in all of his years of practice, all of his years of research, he has never known a single adult with a sexual dysfunction who had a father who was kind and gentle and affectionate and loving and thoughtful and considerate and some of those other feminine qualities. And he said the research is conclusive that girls who have an abundance of fatherly affection are dramatically less promiscuous than are those who do not have that fatherly affection. What can we do with our children that can make a difference? Number one, remember that rules without a relationship will lead to rebellion. When you express your love and acceptance, you give them security. When you express and show your appreciation, you give them significance. When you express and demonstrate your availability, you say to them, you are important. When you express and show your affection, you show that they are lovable. You see, we're supposed to love our kids regardless, not because they clean up the room or make A's or come in on time or are polite and courteous. We love them unconditionally because they are ours. And let me give you one little suggestion that I believe will make a big difference. Start the day properly with your child and end the day properly with your child, and what happens in between will be lots better. My oldest daughter taught me this. When her last baby was born, the one we call Little Lover, she was over at the house one day, and she had brought her parents with her. She was about 6 weeks old. And we had her in the back bedroom in the crib, you know, and she was asleep, and we were all up in the den, and all of a sudden we hear this little cry come out. Well, Mom and Dad and Grandmom and Grandpa all getting a dead run back there. And you know, Mom's got more involved, so she wins the race. She gets back there, and she starts to let the side of the crib down and talking to her baby as she did. And she reached down and she picked her up, cooing to her, and held her up to her breast, talking to her. Then she laid her on the bed, talking to her and taking those wet clothes off and putting the powder on and the dry diapers and all. And then she picked her back up. And as I watched that mother deal with that baby, I thought to myself, why can't we always get our children up that way? What's age got to do with it, really? Now, you know, most people, time the kids get 8 or 10 years old, they sleep a little too long, and they get up in the morning, they go by the kids' room, bang, okay, kids, now get up. You know, yesterday I had to come in here 3 times. We're not going to do it today. How much longer would it take to get up 5 minutes earlier? Gently knock on the door as you walk by, say, it's time to get up, sweetheart. You go in and you plug in the coffee and the toaster, and you come back by and you tap again, and then gently open the door and peek in to see if your child is in a state of undress. And you go in and you sit on the bedside and you stroke your child's hair and kiss him or her on the cheek and say, oh, you are so beautiful. I love you so much. I'm so glad God sent you to me. Today is going to be such a wonderful day. You're going to learn lots of things. You're going to have lots of fun. I can't wait until this evening when you have a chance to tell me all of the things that you did. It won't take 5 more minutes to do it. And that night, if bedtime is 9 o'clock, at 8:30 you say, okay, Sally, now at 9 o'clock, you know, we go to bed. If you need to call Paula about the assignment, if you need to put the dog out and get the bike in, you need to get both drinks of water and take all 3 trips to the bathroom, because at 9 o'clock, you know, we are going to bed. And at 9 o'clock, you cut the television set off. You don't rush back there during the commercial. You're not going to remember 3 days later anything that was on the program anyhow. Take your child to bed. Now, please understand, the child who hates to go to bed at night, just a few hours later have developed a passion and a love for that bed that is unbelievable. I mean, they really have. But in this particular case, that little 7 or 8-year-old is going to con you by asking you the silliest questions you've ever heard of. Let them. Because after about 3 minutes of foolishness, the child will begin to reveal its heart. That's the time you bond with them. That's the time you teach. That's the time you read the Bible stories and pray with them. That's the time you listen to what's on that child's heart. That's the time that you build the future great citizens of America. That's the time that you have the greatest opportunity of all to do something significant. Now, as I share this variety of thoughts here this evening, let me kind of caution you. I might give you the illusion that the redhead and I have the perfect marriage, that we never have any disagreements. That simply is not true. We do, on occasion, disagree. But you know, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And there's some things that we believe are extremely important in our relationships. Number one, here's some basics. Understand that men and women are different. Now, fellas, I know this is going to take you completely by surprise, but really, men and women are different. Second, you got to remember, when people are seriously courting, they're the greatest deceivers of all time. Now, if they've got marriage in mind particularly, they put that best foot forward and they leave that sucker out there until they say, I do. Now, let me get you to tune in on a conversation between the courting couple, and the husband-to-be is doing the talking. Oh, honey, I'm flattered that you want me to go shopping with you, and you want my opinion on the dresses that I might buy. And, oh, I just love to go. Or let's let the future wife talk. Oh no, honey, don't give it a thought. Hey, listen, we can wrap up. I know it gets cold and sometimes the temperature is below 0, but I can be with you at the football game, and we can, you know what I'm talking about? All right. Now, and then one day they get married. Those things just happen. They really do. Understand that there's going to be a certain amount of that before we get married. We communicate differently. Let me tell you something else about them. When you come home, and she's been there, if the washing machine is broken down, and she forgot and left the iron sitting face down when she answered the telephone and burned a hole in it, and the plumbing went kazip, and the housebroken dog became unbroken, and you know, all of those things happen, and you come home, and she is in a dither, and she starts telling you this and this and this. Fellas, she doesn't want you to say, well, step number 1 and step number 2 and step number 3. She doesn't want your head. She's probably smarter than you anyhow. She wants your shoulder. She wants your heart. She wants you to grab her and hug her and say, it sounds like you've had a tough day. Oh, I wish I'd been here to share part of it. You know, it's amazing what a little genuine, sincere interest and concern will happen there. It really is. In a marriage, commitment's important. I know a lot of times people say, well, I married the wrong man or I married the wrong woman. Well, you know, the truth is you can marry the right person and treat them wrong and you end up with the wrong one. Or you can marry the wrong person and treat them right and you'll end up with the right one. The reality is being the right person is more important than marrying the right person. So you can change you. Let me share a story. I have a couple of close friends before his death several years ago. A fellow named John Manise, he and his wife Janet had the most difficult and troubled marriage I think I've ever encountered, but they were committed to each other. They would get together and then separate and get together and separate. They would go to counseling and they tried everything. Well, John suddenly died a few years ago when we were in Australia, and when we got back, we heard of his death. A few months later, Janet and her son came to Dallas to attend our 3-day Born to Win seminar, and I had a chance to talk with her. And she said to me, you know, Zig, Johnny and I finally got together the last few months before his death. She said, I don't know what happened, but everything clicked. And she said, we experienced heaven on earth during those few months that made up more than ever for all of the years of turmoil. It's amazing sometimes how things like that can happen. That commitment. When I was doing the tapes for Courtship After Marriage, I did some research and some studies and some thinking and got some answers. We surveyed 359 couples who had been married 25 or more years and who said they would marry the same person again. And one of the questions we asked these 359 couples was, when you got married, did you consider it a lifetime commitment? 100% of them said, yes, I did. How do you make it a lifetime? How do you make that marriage everything that it's supposed to be? You know, the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians says a lot of things. I believe in the question approach to a lot of things. I challenge you to get the 13th chapter out and read it, and then kind of look at it this way, make it personal. This is your true love daily checklist. Did I speak words of love to my mate today? Did I act with love toward my mate today? Was I patient with my mate today? Was I kind to my wife today or my mate today? Was I jealous or envious of my mate today? Was I proud or boastful to my mate today? Was I selfish with or rude to my mate today? Did I demand my own way with my mate today? Was I irritable or touchy with my mate today? Did I hold on to grudges with my mate today? Was I glad when truth triumphed with my mate today? Was I loyal to others with my mate today? Did I believe in and expect the best from my mate today? Did I use my strengths for my mate today? Did I keep the faith with my mate today? Did I find hope with my mate today? Did I love my mate today? Do I understand that the greatest strength is love? Very significant questions. Be careful who you take your advice from and what you watch and what you see. Zsa Zsa was on a talk show some time back, and the hostess said, "Zsa Zsa, tell us, how do you hold on to a man?" Now, here's a gal that had been married so many times she had rice marks on her face. And he's asking her, how do you hold on to a man? She didn't have a clue. Not a clue as to how you do it. Well, there's some things that we can do. Let me share you a love story with you about the redhead and me. One morning a number of years ago in our bedroom, we were sitting there having coffee. It was quiet, and she said, "You know, honey, I wish I were younger." And I said, "For crying out loud, why?" She said, "If I were younger, I could be your wife even longer." There is a sacredness and a beauty that comes with total commitment, and a happiness and a joy and a delight that you cannot experience any other way. And I believe there are things that husbands and wives can do, regardless of where they are now, with God at the head of the house, to bring that marriage together, that's absolutely making it unbelievable. I honestly thought I loved her when we'd been married a couple of years. I thought we were in love when we'd been married 5 years or 10 years or 20. I didn't have a clue as to what it was to love someone until after July 4th, 1972, when I committed my life to Christ. And I learned to love her through Him. That's love. I remember we were in Israel a few years ago, and I'd been saying some things that bothered me, and it bothered me because it didn't make any sense. And you see, I'm a logical man, and if it doesn't make sense, that kind of bothers me. But I said it because it was true. I said my wife was more beautiful to me today than she was on our wedding day. And you see, that's illogical. As an 18-year-old bride, I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And then how could she, after all of those years with me, how could she possibly be more beautiful than she was on that day? But she is. But it bothered me, and because it didn't make any sense. I was grateful for it. We were in Israel, and it was on Sunday morning, and I recognized that the emotion of the moment, being in the land where my Lord was born and died and where He performed all of His miracles. I'd been on the Sea of Galilee and around it where most of His miracles were performed. I'd read the Sermon on the Mount in the exact spot, they said, which is where He preached it. I'd been in the tomb where they believe He was entombed. I'd served the Lord's Supper as a deacon in the Garden of Gethsemane. I'd seen all of that. And on Sunday morning, Ben Glasson, a little Baptist preacher from South Georgia, was preaching a beautiful message of God's love and power and grace. He had a beautiful singing voice, and he broke out in, "How great thou art." And as I sat there listening, I suddenly realized that tears were just flowing out of my eyes. And now God generally speaks to me in His Bible, but on 3 or 4 occasions since I committed my life to Him, it seems so real that it was almost, I know it wasn't, but it was almost audible. As I said, let me tell you why your wife is more beautiful to you today than she was on your wedding day. I'm letting you look at her through my eyes. And you see, I see her forgiven, which means I see her perfected. Wouldn't this world be a wonderful place if we could look at other people through the eyes of God? The marriage is so sacred. It's so beautiful. It can be so exciting. It can be so wonderful in so many ways. But we got to remember that love, real love, is certainly worth the effort. How do you maintain that love? Well, there are a lot of things that you can do. A couple of examples. The redhead, in all the years we've been married, has probably not opened her car door more than a dozen times when I'm alone. Now, she's one of the finest car door openers in this part of the country. As a matter of fact, she's been written up twice in the Dallas Morning News for her car door opening ability. I mean, she is good at it. But when I walk around that car, I'm always reminded, here is the most important person on earth to me. It's a wonderful reminder. On occasion, we'll get up in the morning and she'll say, well, honey, do you want your coffee or you want tea today? And I said, well, I'll have some tea, but I'll fix it. Oh, no. Let me do it. Now, I realize this sounds like I'm bragging when I say this, but nobody has the same classic moves as they put a tea bag in the cup as I do. And when I pour the hot water on it, it is poetry in motion. I mean, I am good at it. I really am. Let me do it for you. Sometimes I'll be riding at home and she knows I'm a yogurt hound, and I'll be working away, you know, and all of a sudden she'll show up with my favorite yogurt. But it's the little things that, that make the big difference in life. And if you really want to keep the romance going, fellas, don't just remember your brides on birthdays and anniversaries and that sort of stuff. Bring her something on the 23rd day of June, just because it's the 23rd day of June. Make it a surprise, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be a note. This kind of personal, but this is inexpensive and so much fun. Sometimes I'll buy the redhead little candies and hide them all over the house. And I'll make the first two real easy to find, and then she'll know what's up. And she'll spend, a little time running those candies. And just has more fun doing it. I mean, just playing. You see, marriage ought to be that way. We need to have a little fun with each other, don't we? Little things can make quite a big difference, and we need to keep that in mind. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that when we buy those gifts, and if we buy an item of clothing, and you know what, and I know this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but when I buy the redhead clothing, in all the years that we've been married, I have never made a single mistake. It is always exactly the right size, exactly the right color, and exactly what she wants. Now, I'll have to admit that in most cases, I never see it again. But when I bring it in, you would have thought I had brought her the Taj Mahal. Oh, honey, this is so, I love it. And the color, it is so neat. Thank you so much. And then she later takes it down and gets the right size and the right color and everything else. But she encourages me to keep trying. I get so amused at these ladies when they say, now, I don't look good in brown. Why'd you? And besides all of that, this is not the right size. If you don't know the size, buy a petite and save the sales slip. I mean, you want to do that. But ladies, encourage him. Brag on his efforts. Give him an excuse or a reason for doing it again. There's so many little things that we can do. Now, if you want to maintain that marriage in a very solid way, one of the most important things is you want to look at your wife properly. A few years ago, I was interviewed by a Texas magazine, and the person doing the interviewing, somehow or another, the question came up about taking my secretary to lunch. So he said, would you take your secretary to lunch? And I said, well, of course not. He said, what do you mean, of course not? I said, well, first of all, she's a very bright lady. She wouldn't go with me. I said, number two, she and I do not have anything to talk about that we cannot talk about more effectively in my office with the door wide open than we can in a public restaurant. I said, number three, if I took her once, I might want to take her again. And that's got trouble written all over it. Over 50% of all of the divorces are caused because the husband or wife meet somebody in the marketplace and are attracted to them. And in 70% of the cases, they work in the same general proximity or in the same department. And I've had a number of them say to me, we didn't mean for it to happen. Down home, we have a word for that. We split it into two words. It's called baloney. it is crystal clear if there is a sexual attraction between a man and a woman, in 1/10 of a second, you know it is there. And that's when the committed, responsible person does what Paul said, and that is flee from this temptation. You just run away from it. That's the only smart thing to do. I said to this reporter, I said, in addition to all of that, that redhead of mine would just hit the ceiling if I did. I mean, she's not a good shot. She would hit the ceiling, and to be candid about it, I don't want her going out to lunch or dinner or even breakfast with another man, and I do not believe in the double standard. But you know what the bottom line is? A few minutes having a pleasant lunch with another woman is absolutely meaningless when compared to the thought that it might create one moment of pain or doubt for the most important person on earth to me. Now, at age 69, I do not have a bunch of lecherous females waiting to pounce upon me. I really do not. But when I am out of town, and I heading out, and somebody calls in to Laurie, where I've got the engagement, and they might say, I'm going to pick Zig up at the airport. And if it's a woman, Laurie says, who will be with you? And if the lady says no one, Laurie says, well, Zig won't go with you. I follow the example of Billy Graham. I don't sit down in a coffee shop and have a cup of coffee with a woman. I just don't do any of those things simply because I believe we've got to set the example. I believe that's extremely important. Now, sometimes you're in a situation you cannot avoid, but 99 times out of 100, you can make arrangements so that it simply does not happen. It's just foolish to jeopardize a multi-million-dollar business, and even more foolish to jeopardize a marriage that God has ordained. You just don't want to do it. You build the proper relationships by being very, very careful. I want to share with you the fact that we've got to have godly leadership in the home. In the book of 1 Corinthians, in the 11th chapter and the 3rd verse, here's what we read. But there is one matter I want to remind you about, that a wife is responsible to her husband. Her husband is responsible to Christ, and Christ is responsible to God. So many men, say, well, I'm the head of the house, the Bible says so. And they're careful to eliminate the other or pass it over. Now, the redhead and I talk about everything. But ultimately, if a decision must be made, I just believe that if I'm in God's will and I talk to Christ about it, and I've gotten confirmation from Him that this is the way to go, I believe it's my responsibility to say, sweetheart, this is the way we need to go. If I haven't put Christ at my head, then I am just off base. I believe I've got to have that authority. Now, we look at the book of 1 Peter, and we read in the 3rd chapter and the 1st verse here, wives, fit in with your husband's plans. For then, if they refuse to listen when you talk to them about the Lord, they will be won by your respectful, pure behavior. Your godly lives will speak to them better than any words. When you look at 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and the 7th verse, it says, remember that you and your wife are partners in receiving God's blessing. And if you don't treat her as you should, your prayers will not get ready answers. You husband must be careful of your wives, being thoughtful of their needs and honoring them as the weaker sex. Now, some of the feminists get powerful upset when they read that word weaker. They say, what do you mean weaker? For your information, it does not mean lesser. The original language, that was kinder, more gentle, more thoughtful, more tuned in, more sensitive. That doesn't sound lesser to me. A few years ago, the redhead and my son and I were on our way over to Mississippi. We stopped to get some gasoline, and as we were pulling out, there in the soft drink and notions place, sat a couple of hitchhikers, and they obviously hadn't been close to a razor or a bar of soap in a spell. And as we rode past in my kind and gentle and loving way, I muttered under my breath, "Couple of bums, you ought to get them a job and go to work." I like to think that normally I'm not quite that harsh. But the redhead looked at me and she said, "Honey, those men are down on their luck. They need help and our prayers. They don't need our judgment and condemnation. I'm here to tell you, I'm glad I have a member of the weaker sex as my mate." I'm going to close by telling you about love. You see, love is a baked sweet potato. I don't know what you know about baked sweet potatoes, folks, but a sweet potato properly baked, that's the right size. Now, about the size of your fist. If it's too big, it's grainy. If it's too small, it's stringy. And you bake it in an oven that's not too hot, because if it's too hot, the skin puffs up and dries out, and that's the best part of it. And you ruin it if it's too hot. And then when the potato comes out of the oven, you slit it right down the middle, and you take gobs of that good old creamery butter, and you put it in there, and you mix it in until it is totally saturated. Now, if you put anything else on that baked sweet potato, you have absolutely ruined it. It is sacrilegious. Butter alone, the cholesterol, as long as it's mixed with sweet potato, it is absolutely neutralized. There is no problem. And you never eat the baked sweet potato along with other foods. You always eat it as a separate dish, or you eat it as a dessert. And before you take that first bite, you take a good cold drink of water, so those taste buds will be popping and snapping, and you close your eyes for that first bite, and boy, I'll tell you, there's just nothing on earth quite like a baked sweet potato. I cannot imagine anybody not going into ecstasy at the very thought of a baked sweet potato. But of all the people on earth who does not love baked sweet potatoes, the redhead, she just doesn't love them. I can't imagine that being the case, but it is. And so when I come in on those occasions, and I walk in the front door, and hitting me right square in the face is that pungent, unmistakable odor of the baked sweet potato. That somehow or another, the odor has escaped out of the oven and fallen down to the kitchen floor and gone across the kitchen and down the hallway, turned left down, and arose to nostril height right as I walked in. And when that happens, I know that the redhead has been to the store. And while she was at the store, she was thinking about me. When she picked up that sweet potato, she was thinking about me. And when she got home and washed it, she was thinking about me. And when she put it in the oven, she was thinking about me, because she doesn't love baked sweet potatoes. Oh, baked sweet potatoes, that's love. And you might say, but Zig, a baked sweet potato? That's such a little thing. Yeah, it really is. But isn't that what real love is all about? A long series of a lifetime of little things you do for your mate for no reason at all except the best reason of all, and that is that you love her or that you love him. Folks, I can't begin to tell you. I wish everybody could share the sheer joy and excitement about what a committed, loving marriage can be. 3 years ago, we had our dream vacation. We drove over 3,000 miles. After 51 years of courting and 49 years of marriage, we still have much to say to each other. I'm like a kid when I get up on the morning I get to come home. This morning I said, I get to see the redhead tonight. When I got on the airplane, I was thinking, it won't be long now. As the plane was coming in, I was thinking, it's just a matter of minutes. I didn't expect her to be in the airport. I expected her to be out in the car because she's had that little foot operation. And when I walked in and there she stood, I'm here to tell you that with Christ and the center of that marriage, I couldn't wait to get her and grab her and hug her. We do an awful lot of hugging. In a normal day's time when I'm around the house where I do my writing, my telephoning, and my dictation, we will hug 10, 15, 20, 30 times. They're not long, they're not suggestive. They just say, I sure do love you. You mean so much to me. I'm glad you're mine. Oh, folks, it can be so magnificent. And I'm not saying that all marriages can be that way, but I believe with all of my heart that yours can get better and better and better. I honestly believe that 10 years from now, I'll look back and say, I thought I loved her on our 49th anniversary. But man, this 60th, that is when we fell in love. Fall in love with your mate. It'll help you in every area of your life. You become an incredible role model for your children and for other people's children, for America. It's where we've got to get is back to our family through our God. That's the way we build a family and a magnificent business. God bless you as you do.
Please remember, the message you just heard is copyrighted material and reproduction in any form is prohibited by law and prevented by your integrity. The Zig Ziglar Corporation is the recognized leader in goals achievement with over 2 decades of experience in helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. For more information about the Zig Ziglar Corporation products and services, call 1-800-527-0306 or 214-233-9191. Now to invest in your future.
Tom Ziglar here. I want to thank you for listening to this program, and I want to give you some more resources. First off, you can come to Ziglar.com and you can learn about all the products and services that we have. We actually have a free newsletter that you can get there that'll get you motivated and inspired on a weekly basis. On Ziglar.com, you're going to find out the other programs that we have. We do live training in a classroom. We certify people to actually go out and carry on the Ziglar legacy by teaching our existing programs. If you're a leader, a sales professional, a family member, and you just want to grow as an individual, all of these things are things that we carry on. We also have an amazing Facebook page at The Zig Ziglar on Facebook. 3.6 million at this time are following us on Facebook, and it's growing by over 25,000 a week. So you need to check out that. We have so many insights there. And why is it so popular? Because people need hope and encouragement. If you want hope and encouragement, that's the place to go. And then on iTunes, we have a podcast called The Ziglar Show. Comes out every week, absolutely free. Sign up for that on your very own smartphone, on your media player. You can get a new inspirational message from us on a regular basis. Why do we do all these things? It's simple. Life has so much to offer. When you know what it has to offer and then you make the right choices, your life changes for the better. And we are in the life-changing business. We want to help you get from where you are to where you want to go. I hope this program has been of value to you. I hope you share it with those around you. Listen to it in the car over the speakers, because everybody can benefit from this message. Thank you for taking the time of investing in yourself and in your future. And I hope to hear from you directly through Ziglar.com. Let us know your story and how this has made an impact in your life.